In Ilara village, life moved as slowly as the river. Boys grew up to be farmers, fishermen, or carpenters, just like their fathers. The girls, after secondary school, would marry young and start families, cooking and caring for their children. The people of Ilara didn't know about university. It was like a dream they thought they will never fulfill. To them, education ended after secondary school, and that was enough. Parents were content as long as their children could finish at the local secondary school. They didn't ask for more because they didn't know more. Life in the village was steady, like the sun rising and setting every day. This is how it had always been, how it was for years. But something was coming, something that would shake the quiet life of Ilara. A change was in the air, like a storm about to roll in. The village didn't know it yet, but life would never be the same again. One bright sunny day, Ilara village buzzed with excitement. From far away, a group of city students came for an excursion. The villagers had never seen anything like it. The students walked tall, holding their books in one hand and talking about life in the city. Their words sounded like music to the villagers' ears. "Look at how they walk," the villagers whispered. "Look at how they talk." The students showed them many strange and interesting things. They talked about the big machines they used in the city, machines that could build houses and make farming easier. They showed the villagers how they studied with the help of those machines. Everyone's eyes were wide with wonder. The chief, talking to other villagers, couldn't believe it. "This is how our children should be." The whole village was thinking the same thing. For the first time ever, the idea of sending their own children to the city for university crossed their minds. The city students stayed for only a short time, but they left something behind. Hope. The villagers now dreamed of a future where their children would go beyond the village, beyond secondary school, and reach for something greater. They wanted their children to wear fancy clothes, walk tall, and become wise, just like those city students. The villagers gathered under the big Iroko tree to talk about this new dream of theirs. The men rubbed their chins, the women whispered to each other, and the children sat close, listening wide-eyed. They all agreed one child must go to the city and learn the ways of the world. But who would it be? They looked around, thinking hard, and then someone spoke up. Nia. Nia is the best and most behaved girl in the village. More importantly, she aced and broke all the previous school records in the community secondary school. The teachers in this meeting attested it. Her beauty was like the sun shining after rain, bright and pure. She was clever too, with quick eyes that noticed everything. She was kind, always helping her mother, always laughing, always making the elders smile. "Yes, Nia," they said, their voices growing stronger. "She will be the one to make Ilara proud." It is the tradition of the villagers to gather their money inside a calabash for Nia's journey. She fell to her knees with a smile, and they pooled what little money they had, every coin they could spare. The women packed food, dried yams, ground pepper, a little palm oil, indomie, and kept it inside a storage hut. And like a river flowing with love, they showered her with blessings. The women gathered to pray for her, saying words of strength and protection, filling her heart with courage. And with a heart full of hopes and dreams from the whole village, Nia left Ilara, her small bag clutched tightly, her mind buzzing with thoughts of the city. As she walked away, the villagers watched, waving and wiping tears from their eyes, sending her off with all their dreams riding on her small shoulders. When Nia stepped into the city, it was as if she had entered a whole new world. Buildings stood tall like giant trees, cars whisked by like birds, and the streets were full of people, each with their own path and purpose. Nia's eyes were wide with wonder, and her heart beat with both excitement and fear. School was a strange place at first, but Nia was quick to learn. She studied hard at night and made friends with most girls in the classroom. Nia met a girl named Layla, who became her best friend. Layla knew every corner of the school and showed Nia the way around. With Layla by her side, Nia felt a little more at ease. She told Nia about her financial status and that she is just a village girl. Life in the city was not easy. The money Nia's village sent was little, just enough to buy a few things. Some days, She would go to bed with a rumbling stomach, her mind drifting back to Ilara, where her family and the village had given all they could to support her. "I must not fail them," she whispered to herself each night, holding on to the small hope they had placed in her heart. And so Nia carried on, balancing the city's challenges with her village's dreams, her spirit as strong as a young tree swaying but unbroken. At first, Nia thought her new school was filled with kind faces, like her friend Layla, but soon she learned that not all faces wore smiles. Some students, especially those from rich homes, saw how basic she is, and they began to notice that Nia always walked to school, her accent wasn't like theirs, and Layla always paid for her food. They began to whisper as she walked past, their voices sharp as thorns. "Look at her," they'd murmur. "She's just a village girl." Some of the girls laughed behind her. "Doesn't she have any money?" Each word stung like a bee sting. Nia tried to hold her head high, to ignore their laughter and hurtful words. She would walk quickly, hoping the day would end soon, hoping that tomorrow would be better. But each day, the whispers grew louder, and the laughter turned into taunts. They began calling her "village girl," as if it were her name, each word echoing in her mind. Some of the girls teased her too, nudging each other and smirking as they saw her in her simple clothes. They'd block her path, their eyes cold. "Go back to where you came from," they sneered. "You don't belong here." Every night, Nia's heart grew heavy, and loneliness wrapped around her like a shadow that wouldn't leave. But she was no stranger to hardship. She clenched her fists, reminding herself of the village that had trusted her, the people who had sent her with nothing but hope. Still, the burden grew heavier each day, and Nia began to wonder if the city would break her spirit. The once bright light in her eyes dimmed, as if the city's shadows were swallowing her whole. As time passed, Nia couldn't help but notice something odd about her friend Layla. Though Layla's family didn't have much, she always seemed to have money, new shoes, snacks, and the latest dresses. Nia, who counted every coin and struggled to buy the smallest things, found herself wondering. One afternoon, Nia looked at Layla, her curiosity finally spilling over. "Layla," she asked gently, "how do you manage to buy all these things? Where do you get the money?" Layla laughed, a quick, light sound, brushing the question away. "Ah, Nia, don't worry about it," she said, smiling. "Just a little hustle here and there." But Nia's mind couldn't rest. She would watch as Layla disappeared in the evenings, dressed up with a little more care, her eyes bright and secretive. And each time, Nia's curiosity grew sharper, like the edge of a knife. One night, after another empty dinner, Nia whispered to herself, "I must know." She approached Layla the next day, her voice trembling. "Layla, please. I need to know how you do it. Let me work with you. Whatever it is, I can't keep living like this." Layla's smile faded as she looked at her friend with a serious gaze. "Nia, are you sure?" she began, her voice low. "This isn't like other work. It's different." But Nia's eyes were resolute, her need too great to turn back. "I don't care," she said firmly, her voice steadier than she felt. "Just show me. I have no choice." After a long pause, Layla finally nodded, sensing Nia's desperation. That night before Layla left for the club, she sat Nia down and broke everything down to her. "Listen, Nia," Layla began softly, her tone serious. "What I do? It's not something you tell people about. It's a way to make money fast, but it's not what you'd expect. There is a part of the city that there's a demand for certain services. Some men here in the city have fetishes for girls our age, and they pay really well. You don't have to be comfortable with it. It's more about letting them feel in control, or let us control them. It's strange, even unsettling, but it's how I've managed to be able to afford this." Nia's heart skipped a beat, her pulse quickening as she understood what her friend was saying. This wasn't the kind of work she had imagined. It was something sinful, dangerous, something her parents would never approve of. But Nia, worn down by hunger and hardship, nodded without a word. "I'll do it," she whispered, her voice quiet but determined. For the first time in months, she felt a sliver of relief, though it was shadowed by a growing darkness in her heart. Her path was changing, and she could feel it, but there was no turning back now. That night, Layla came to Naya's small dorm room, carrying one of her own dresses, a sleek, dark gown that shimmered faintly under the light. It was well worn, but still beautiful, with a quiet elegance that gave it a touch of glamour. "Here, try this on," Layla said, holding it out with a smile. Nia slipped into the dress, feeling its cool fabric hug her frame. It was unlike anything she had ever worn, bold and sophisticated, far from the simple clothes she was used to. Layla then sat Nia down and began carefully applying makeup, using soft strokes to bring out her natural beauty. She swept color over Nia's cheeks, lined her eyes with a gentle hand, and painted her lips a rich shade that made her look both powerful and beautiful. She parted Nia's hair into delicate braids, each one precise and neat. "You look perfect," Layla murmured, her voice soft but proud. Naya followed her friend to a bar where the lights were bright and the music pounded like a heartbeat. The air was thick with laughter and chatter, strangers drifting from table to table. Layla guided her through it all, showing her how to talk, how to laugh, how to charm. And Nia, nervous but determined, followed every step, every whisper of Layla's guiding words. She hadn't been there long when a man across the room noticed her. His gaze lingered, admiration clear in his eyes. He approached her, introducing himself with a charm and confidence that was magnetic. After a few minutes of talking, he leaned closer and asked her to join him in a private VIP room. Nia hesitated, but felt an intoxicating pull to see where this would lead. Once they were inside the room, separated from the noise of the club, he smiled and asked if she would dance for him. The request took her by surprise, but the allure of the moment overtook her hesitation. She moved with a grace she hadn't known she possessed, feeling his eyes follow her every movement. When the song ended, he reached into his pocket and handed her a sum of money, more than she had ever held. She accepted it, the bills slipping into her palm like a gift from another world, filling her with a strange new sensation, something close to excitement. As Nia left the club that night, her pockets full for the first time, she felt almost weightless, as if the city itself had finally let her in on its secrets. When she got back to her tiny hostel room, she emptied her pockets onto the bed and stared at the cash in disbelief. She couldn't believe this money was hers. She ran her fingers over the bills, feeling both amazed and giddy, letting herself forget her village, her promises, and the weight of the hope she'd carried with her. All she felt was the thrill of her new life, a kind of freedom that tasted sweeter than anything she'd ever known. Nia and Layla had started this life out of sheer need. They were drawn in by the promise of fast cash, enough to ease the constant worries about food, rent, and the never-ending costs of city life. At first, it was the desperation for money that pulled them in, but as the nights went on, the thrill of it, the music, the lights, the way strangers looked at them with admiration, became something they looked forward to. Layla took it all in stride, while Nia watched and learned, finding herself swept up in the glamorous illusion they wore each night like a disguise. Though Nia hadn't yet taken her first customer, she could feel herself slipping into this new reality, where the idea of quick, easy money made everything feel exciting, like a game she was learning to play. She told herself it was harmless, just another way to get by. One night, as they laughed and danced, Layla pulled Nia aside to introduce her to one of her regulars, a man who seemed particularly interested in Nia. He had an easy smile and a way of making you feel like you were the only one in the room. After some small talk, he invited her to his place. At his home, he looked her over and leaned in close, lowering his voice. "I like to keep things natural," he said, hinting that he preferred not to use protection. "But I'll make it worth your while. 3 times what Layla told you to charge." Nia felt a flicker of doubt, but pushed it aside, the promise of quick money too hard to ignore. She agreed, letting herself forget any hesitation. This quickly became a routine. He was a regular now, calling on her often, willing to pay for the chance to have her all to himself. Sometimes he hinted about having both her and Layla join him, but they always brushed it off with a laugh, keeping some lines firmly drawn. For months, Nia slipped deeper into this new life. She wasn't on any birth control, never thinking much about it, just hoping things would stay easy and under control. Then, one early morning, after another night at his place, she returned to her small room feeling unusually drained. Her whole body ached, and she brushed it off as tiredness from too many late nights. But even after resting, the ache didn't go away. Days passed, and instead of feeling better, she felt weaker, more exhausted. It was as if something had settled inside her, slowing her down, pulling her in a way she couldn't understand. Her body, once so full of energy, now seemed to be slipping out of her control. Then something even stranger began to happen. Her belly started to swell. At first she thought it was her eyes playing tricks, but it grew rounder each day, hardening like clay. Her arms and legs, however, grew thin, frail as twigs. The other girls whispered, their faces pale with fear. "It's like a curse," one of them murmured, shaking her head. Naya herself was frightened. She touched her swollen belly, pressing gently as if trying to understand the strange change. She felt her bones poking through her skin elsewhere, her cheeks hollowing out, her eyes growing large and distant. Her friends did all they could, bringing herbs and medicines, watching over her, hoping each morning to see her strength return. But no matter what they tried, Naya only grew weaker, her skin losing its glow, her hair turning dull, her once bright eyes now heavy with a shadow no rest could lift. When they finally took Nia to the hospital, the news hit like a bombshell. Nia was pregnant. She sat there in stunned silence as the doctor explained her condition, barely able to process it. She had only ever been with one man, Layla's client, the one who'd promised her the world and seemed so eager to take care of her. But now, in the bright, sterile light of the hospital, she felt nothing but a sinking shame and regret. Thoughts of her family flooded her mind, the parents who had sent her to the city full of pride and dreams. Now, she was carrying a child, and she dreaded the look in their eyes if they ever found out. Desperate, Nia saw no other choice than to return to the man who had started all of this. When she arrived at his door, her heart was pounding. She broke the news, expecting anger or rejection. But instead, he surprised her. He promised to support her, even offering to marry her and make a real family. It was the first time in weeks that she felt the weight on her shoulders ease just a little. Though her college dismissed her over the pregnancy scandal, she consoled herself with thoughts of this new life, clinging to the hope that she could find stability and love, even if it wasn't the future she'd imagined. But there were secrets she didn't know. Unbeknownst to her, he continued his life as it was, seeing other escorts, slipping out late at night with whispered promises that she trusted. And then, one night, as Nia visited him to collect money for her needs, they spent the night together, like so many other nights. Days later, her health took a strange and unsettling turn. Weakness swept over her, and she knew something was very wrong. At her next doctor's appointment, her world shattered completely. She had contracted AIDS. The doctor's words washed over her in a blur, her mind spinning with the terrifying realization that she could pass this to her baby. Nia's hopes crumbled in an instant. Everything she'd fought for, every sacrifice she'd made, seemed to mock her now. Alone in her room, the despair took hold, growing heavier by the hour. Her life in the city, her family's pride, her dreams of a fresh start, all of it now felt impossibly distant. Overcome by hopelessness and the fear of what lay ahead, she made a final decision. One quiet night, with the weight of sorrow pressing down on her, she swallowed a vial of poison, ending the pain that had spiraled out of control. When her body was returned to Ilara, the village was devastated. People wept openly for the girl who had left with so much promise, now returning in silence. Her father, unable to bear the heartbreak, suffered a heart attack upon seeing her and passed away 3 days later. The story of Nia became a somber tale in Ilara, a reminder of a dream gone wrong, of the dangers lurking in distant cities, and of how fragile hope can be when it's left unprotected. Her memory lingered as a warning and a heartbreak that touched every soul in the village. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, please like the video, comment on what you learned from the tale, and don't forget to subscribe for more enchanting tales just like this one. Thank you.